It's 8:09 on Nightlife. Media is an industry that has seen plenty of transformation, especially in the past decade or so, with the proliferation of the internet and everything related to it. We're now well and truly into the digital age, where information is available in real time and news travels around the world as it breaks. What's it like to be a media practitioner in the past decade as you went through this transition? We find out from Bertrand Teo, who is author of a new book titled Navigating Disruption, Media Relations in the Digital Age.
Disruption tells the digital transformation story of legacy newsrooms in Singapore, as well as of the rise of new media players. And it offers insights and advice for communication professionals, from industry leaders and even academics. In the book, I speak to 5 experts, and including an influencer and the head of a digital PR agency. Many topics are covered, it's wide-ranging. I talk about campaign planning, corporate storytelling, and future trends. So you asked also about the reasons why I wrote the book. So for me, the main reason is because I felt I had a unique story to tell, a story about my time in the US and in Singapore newsrooms, and just seeing that tangible impact of digitalization in the newsroom and how it hurt traditional newsrooms. And so I thought that was very interesting to share. And the second reason was that I'm doing my master's now. So I felt that, writing a book might help me to tie everything in together, just to make sense of what I've learned and to share with my peers. And the last reason is because I want to tell a Singapore story. I'm someone who really believes in telling Singapore stories because I think that it will improve the social capital of Singapore, build national identity. And so I thought it'd be great to share a story and to get people to know Singapore culture better and our way of life.
So the book, is it mainly about your personal journey in the media? Have you always been in the media, or have you done other things?
Yes, so I've done other things, but it's related to the media. The first part of the book is really just my personal journey to illustrate that impact, to the newsroom, because I talk about my time witnessing a retrenchment exercise in a newsroom in Louisville, Kentucky. So that's a city of about 1 million people. It's not like Singapore. It's a city that revolves around the Kentucky Derby, the horse race, Muhammad Ali, the boxer, and even KFC, the Yum brands. They're based there. So I was there, and I was an intern reporter, and I got to see, while I was there, within the first few weeks, I saw a retrenchment exercise, and that really, shaped the way I saw, this area, this industry, and how it would change. And then I came back to Singapore and I worked at CNA from 2011 to 2015. And there again, I saw this whole change in the newsroom because back in 2011, things were all right in Singapore newsrooms, according to the annual reports. And later it changed in that we got to see some retrenchment exercises happening here as well. And then the newsroom changed from TV operation to a transmedia digital first operation. So I talk about that in the first part of my book. The second part of my book is about media relations, about the corporate communication function and how it works, and also the impact to that function because of the changes in the newsroom. And in part 3, I provide a glimpse into the future of corporate communication, the landscape and the skills needed. So I was trained as a print and digital journalist, but I also went to corporate communications before I embarked on my master's.
Oh, okay. So in a way you started your journalism career proper in the United States. You interned there.
I would say that I started in Singapore before going to the US. I was in my book. I talk about it in the first chapter, where I was this roving reporter. Well, I would say I worked for a town council newsletter. I was a vendor for magazine newsletters for town council and ministries. Set boards. So I was able to tell ministers and members of parliament and follow them and write about how they engage communities and about events that took place in the neighborhoods. So that was my first start, and I think that really got me to embrace journalism. And so that was a job I took up post army, my NS, and then with that experience, which was about a year, 8 months to be precise. Then I went to the US and I continued on my journalism journey.
Okay, so tell us about your experience in the US. I mean, how different is it there as compared to here?
So I worked for 2 metropolitan newspapers as an intern reporter. So this is besides my student journalism. We had a Indiana. I was at Indiana University where I did student journalism, but there were opportunities to also work for real newsrooms, which I embraced and I took on those opportunities. My main takeaway, I think, is just seeing how the First Amendment worked in the US, the constitutional right to freedom of expression, and how that helped to guide the way journalists and editors work. So I felt that there was less of a fear to push out information, to share opinions, and the priority was really just to keep people informed and let them decide for themselves. Then, but that's it. I think that the US media system is not that fantastic for minority representation. Positive Asian representation in the media, I think, is lacking in the kind of environment. And I think this is because that kind of freewheeling environment is one that encourages more stereotypes, more stereotypical narratives that is just a lot easier to latch on. So I think those are that is what my two key takeaways from how things are different between the US and Singapore. Singapore is a lot, I would say, controlled in the sense that each race has its own media outlet and they're bound to report and share news, and so there's sort of a better representation in the media for all the different races.
Okay. And arguably the most important development in the media industry in the past decade or so is the move to digital newsrooms. So what are your thoughts on this disruption? So disruption in the newsrooms, I think what that really means is that, nowadays, most of us, maybe myself and millennials and the younger generation, we receive our news via WhatsApp, via Facebook, social media in general, Telegram. So this is where we get our news from. So that is obvious social. And that, to me, is the basis of this transformation behind the traditional newsroom. It had to adapt. Otherwise, it might lose their audience. So for me, in the book, I actually framed this through what I shared earlier on, the retrenchment exercise, in which I saw how people were laid off. 50 journalists and other media professionals were laid off that day. And then at CNA, I got to see this transition from TV operations to a transmedia operation. And in the book, I actually wrote down how I lay out the changes within the newsroom, how social media evangelism took place, and then things really pick up for the digital desk in the newsroom. So I think this book's really for anyone who wants to learn about the inner workings of the newsroom, how it operates, and how it crafts narratives. Speaking today with the author of a new book, Navigating Disruption, Media Relations in the Digital Age, he's Bertrand Teo, and our conversation continues after a quick check on the roads. Navigating Disruption, Media Relations in the Digital Age. What do you think of the role of the reporter in this day and age? Is he or she someone who just writes, or must he or she go beyond that to visualize how the story is told, and to be armed with the requisite skills, to present the story across using different media as well?
So I think this depends on the media outlet and the platform they're on. But in general, right, let's put it in general, it doesn't really change this digitalization and the skill sets that are required for a journalist. I don't think it's changed very much in terms of the essential skills, the good old checking of sources, the ways of interviewing people to get the information out there, and crafting headlines, crafting the stories with the pyramid when it comes to writing news articles. But I think the way it plays out in social media, that might change, in that I think on social media, people are flipping through their phones, they're going through their feed. So the writing needs to be a bit more succinct. Maybe it can be a bit more authentic, so that, and of course, because social media, digital media is multimedia, it allows you to have visuals, it allows you to have video. So, having the added skills of putting the visuals in there and the video and other memes, for example, and other things will actually help to make the story a lot more engaging on social media. One other thing that I want to add is that for the digital space and how it's changed the way journalists operate is that I think a lot of journalists go to social media now to get their news. They go to Twitter to get updates and to source for public opinion on trending issues. So I think that's one thing that to be aware about. I think the digital media players like Mothership and Must Share News, those are the people that are really the masters, in terms of digital media natives, right? Digital natives, media organizations. They are the ones who are really able to create a content that's engaging, I think. Let me also share on the flip side for media relations people. I think that for media relations folks, those in corporate communications, whether they be in-house PR agencies, I think for them, then it's really critical. I think it's valuable for them to be content producers themselves. They need to not only have the media context relationships, they also need to know how to create stories on social platforms for their clients. So in the book, I talk about this interview with social media experts who's able to share a bit more about how to create narratives online.
And do you think up-and-coming media practitioners are being probably put through the paces these days to cover news?
Well, I think they are. I think that communication technology is ever evolving, so it's always handy and helpful to keep learning. That's why I wrote my book. I think it's a way. Writing the book is a way for me to learn and to continue to be updated. And I think that for media practitioners, they should continually keep themselves updated and continue to look towards what's happening around them in terms of the practice, in terms of the thought leadership behind it. As media professionals, we want to engage various audiences. So it's crucial to understand the platform. For example, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and how all these platforms work and how to generate content for these platforms. Because communication technology is always evolving, so it's crucial to just keep getting ourselves updated on the platform and how it operates, and how to engage audiences through the platform. And I think the other thing for media practitioners is that, in general, for journalists especially, and public relations professionals, we need to be tuned into the issues, because issues are ever evolving. What impacts us and what concerns us, I think, is ever evolving. I think each generation, each audience, the Gen Xers, the Millennials, the Gen Zs, the different age groups, right? They all have their own sets of values and concerns. So for media relations people, it's about understanding the audience, about understanding what the audience is concerned about, and to understand what the best platforms to engage them. So it's always best to just continue to learn. Things are always changing, so it's really to rest on our laurels, I think, not to media professionals any good.
What are your thoughts on news consumption in this digital age?
I think news consumption in the digital age is all about information on demand. People just expect things very quickly, and that also means that things like fake news, hoaxes, false advertising goes on digital space. All these things get circulated very quickly, and therefore it is, I think, imperative that brands like CNA and ST provide accurate, timely information. So, what it means to me is that we need our news brands, we need our trusted news brands to be around. I think for corporate communications folks, the media relations people, for those working for government and for corporations, they need to also understand and monitor their social media communities. Many of them are building their own communities online, so they need to react very promptly to crisis. So, like I mentioned, the information's on demand right now. Things that can inflame people online on social media communities can easily spread around. So they can just spiral and just hurt an organization's reputation. So I think for corporate communications professionals, they need to be aware of that. They need to react very quickly. And I touched on all these different things in the book. I talked to experts who can share a bit more about how corporate communications professionals can manage such crises.
And the past year has shown the importance of information and the media's role during a health crisis. What have you observed?
So, the pandemic, I think, really just reaffirmed to me the importance of communication. We saw how the government quickly mobilized themselves. Of course, I think the priority was the healthcare workers. So the health authorities were the ones who were really working themselves 24/7. But I think the other area, the other ministry that was really involved in this whole thing was the comms industry, the MCI, the Ministry of Communication Information. So we saw the ministers all gathered together, forming panels and doing regular briefings, and just sharing with the public about what's happening, what the updates, how many people are infected, and where are the places that you need to avoid. So I think we saw all that just unfolded during the pandemic, and to me, the communication, to me, is evergreen. It's always needed. We need to always mobilize to push out instructions and key announcements, and to make sure why this is so important, so that fake news hoaxes don't spread online, because there are always people who are speculating, and there's rumors abound, some fake cures. All these things are spreading online as well. It's important that the professionals need to get together to push out the information before the fake news and hoaxes get to people and cause harm.
On Nightlife is author of a new book titled Navigating Disruption, Media Relations in the Digital Age. Bertrand Teo's conversation with me continues after the news. That's in about 20 minutes. Seen plenty of transformation, especially in the past decade or so, with the proliferation of the internet, social media, smartphones, and everything related to the web. We're now well and truly into the digital age, where information is available in real time and news travels around the world as it breaks. What's it like to be a media practitioner in the past decade as you went through this transition? We find out from Bertrand Teo, who is author of a new book titled Navigating Disruption, Media Relations in the Digital Age.
The other thing that I saw during the pandemic, I felt was the case is that media brands, the journalism brands like CNN and ST, I saw that the readership and the viewership all went up during this period of time. What it reinforced to me is that we need the trusted news brands, because we need to go to them to get the relevant information. Otherwise, when hoaxes or fake news spread, there might be things like grocery runs and people panicking. So the trusted brands, the role that they play, I think is reaffirmed to me. Yes, like I mentioned, our comms professionals need to come together to set the tone on conveying key issues and instructions, I think, especially during a crisis such as the pandemic.
It also seems that the digital age has created room for citizen journalism. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's both good and bad. Citizen journalism, it creates an environment where there are more opinions and voices. But you also have people who don't have the right journalism training, who are also pushing out what they think is important, their opinions, and even stories that they think are, or things that they find are facts, but they didn't verify them accurately. And so, when these kind of things happen, when citizen journalists, those without training or those who inaccurately report the news, they share news, and they get planted in Facebook groups, in forums, and online discussion boards, I think it can cause a frenzy and it can cause harm to society. So that's something that we need to be aware of, I think, for comms professionals especially. What I think, citizen journalism is something that's been around for a while now because of social media, because of digital media. I think what this also means is that the role of quality journalism is ever so required to be a guideline of what's true and what's false. And I think that many people, they look to multiple sources of news these days. I did a research project with my peers at NTU, and we polled some young Singaporeans, the young ones, Gen Z, from 18 to 20 plus, and they told me that they actually refer to a variety of news sources. So I think that they are quite aware about fake news and how to review information out there. What I think is necessary is for everyone to just, if you see something on a discussion board and you think that's news and you want to shout it out, maybe just hold it first and make sure you check multiple sources and ensure that the news that you want to share is accurate and is worth sharing. Otherwise, it might just cause people to do something silly.
Let's get back to your book, Bertrand. Did you write it specifically for a certain type of audience, or if not, who do you think should be reading your book?
I think this book is for anyone who is interested to understand how newsrooms operate, how they build narratives, and also for people who are interested in the key functions of corporate communications. How communicators can engage the media or engage their public, their audiences directly in the digital age. Because in the digital age, you have so many tools out there like podcasts and live streaming to engage your audience. Many companies have their own social media following. So this book is for people to understand this practice and how to build momentum and to create campaigns and to engage people with news or information for your company. And if you're a journalist as well, on how to create narratives for your audience to make it palatable for them to understand things. To me, it's a book for everyone. Like I mentioned, we talked about the pandemic earlier on and the role that communications play. And I think that communication is just so necessary for society in every way. So this book to me is something for everyone, be it the layperson or the aspiring communicator or even the seasoned media professional. Technology is always evolving and there's always something to learn about the different ways people consume information, whether it be on TikTok, whether it be on live streaming. Our youths are doing on different platforms, and it is, I think, critical to understand the platforms they're using, what are the ways the digital media legal framework is doing to make sure that things are working all right. So this book has everything in it. I feel that it's necessary for a comms professional to understand as a first step.
And what about for you? Where do you see yourself? What do you see yourself doing? How do you fit into grander scheme of things in a couple of years?
Well, I see myself as a storyteller, first and foremost, and I will gladly take on roles to tell Singapore stories because of my own experience in the US, where I felt that people may not understand Singapore very well, at least people outside of Asia. I think the understanding of this region of Southeast Asia, of Singapore, there needs to be a bit more awareness of it, I think, this region, and there's so much diversity here. In the introduction of my book, I talk about the pandemic and how it caused Asians in some pockets of societies in Western communities especially to be harmed because they were targeted. People link the COVID-19 with East Asia, right, the East Asian phase, because that's where they think the virus came from, China. So that resulted in a lot of people getting hurt. I think if we can increase the understanding of our identity here in Southeast Asia and let people know more about the diversity here, so then people understand, that there's just so many different stories that can be told here, of people of different backgrounds. That would be a great way to kind of lessen the harm on Asians in general, because people don't just stereotype and just immediately think you're one thing and they attack you for it. So that's what I think I want to be in a role where I can tell Singapore stories, tell stories about Southeast Asia, about East Asia also. Let me also just bring it back to the book here. I think that the future, if I can also talk a little bit about what I think my book can provide in terms of introducing that glimpse into the future of corporate communications. So in part 3 of my book, I talk a bit about the digital media laws like POFMA and interview an expert to share a bit more about that. So that is also a great way for people to understand how things are shaping up in terms of the laws. And then I talk about corporate storytelling and internal communications, strategy, as well as content marketing. So all these, I think, are essential skills for professionals who are communicators, who want to know a bit more about what kind of skills they need for the future of corporate communication. So I think this book touches on so many wide-ranging topics on communication and also for journalism in the digital age. It's a book for everyone. The communication is ever evolving. The technology is ever changing. And I think everyone, for media professionals, it's great to just keep continually updated on this evolving environment. So yeah, I really encourage everyone to try to get a copy of my book. I interview experts in the book, people who are industry experienced people as well as people influencers, like for example, people who are adapting the native users of digital technology. So they provide many interesting perspectives, and I think that they, will be interesting to kind of get a good range of views from the native users as well as those folks who have been in communications for a while.
The title of the book is Navigating Disruption, Media Relations in the Digital Age, author Bertrand Teo. I'm Eugene Lowe for Nightlife on CNA 938.